Ben, we're starting this one over.
Welcome. I'm Ben Boyce, and this is the annual episode where we share a selection of poetry submitted throughout the year and eventually selected for publication in volume 20 of Captured Words Free Thoughts. The magazine is now in print, so if you or someone you know would like a paper copy, whether in prison or out, email me and I'll make sure you get one, as always, free of charge. The goal of our team, led by Dr. Stephen Hartnett, thanks to him for 20 years of growing this awesome project, is to not only share the voices of those who are locked behind walls in the United States, but also to aid in the reconstruction of public imagination of incarceration in the incarcerated. As longtime readers and listeners know, what you encounter when you go into prison is often a far cry from what you expect. It's not violence, hatred, and evil. It's usually bottled up creativity, untapped or capped raw talent with no outlet, incredibly intelligent people who have no idea of their capabilities. They've been convinced they're nothing but dumb criminals, failures. Thanks to all the people inside prison and out who made this volume possible. If you or someone you know has poetry, artwork, or prose that you think might fit with our format, send it my way. This volume is packed with gold. The final edit was more than 90 pages long. So we decided to let the pieces that we recorded speak for themselves, mostly so as to not interrupt the flow with our clunky commentary. Instead, I'll finish up this brief introduction and then let the poetry run until Megan hops in at the end to cap this jam session. We hope you enjoy it. It was a ton of hard work, but I think it was worth it. Thanks to my students at UC Denver who volunteered to record pieces. Thanks to Megan and Sophie, they showed up again too. One final note. Attempting Sobriety, the 5th poem that you'll hear, and Methamphetamine, the 10th poem you'll hear, they were both authored by Dylan DJ LaPointe. The 13th poem you'll hear is called Prison World by Larry Stromberg, and the 16th poem is called A Better Way by Todd Broxmeyer. Okay, with that, on with the show.
My Freedom Kite by Monica Petrosian. I'm going on a long journey with an empty suitcase. I won't see any landscape on my way. I'm traveling on the bus of broken dreams from the days that are going to be postponed. I'm learning how to laugh in the middle of my tears. I'm going on a long journey with nothing but my own strength. I want the time to go as fast as an instant. I want to be brave and not fade away. I'm going on a long journey, but I'm not taking any pictures or sharing smiles on the web. This is an inner journey. I hold on to the good I can steal from the generous day when my faith prevails. I want to sleep deeply and forget all that was before. Flashes of lost dreams are still tangled on the line of the kite to which I chained my soul and let go. I'm searching for that giant multicolor kite that stormy winds swept away from all I ever loved. I'm walking into this tall grass that towers over me and scratches my skin. I'm taking blind steps, not knowing where I'm going. I just know I want back my giant multicolored kite. My soul is wounded, my eyes are red from crying, and my hands are cold, but I keep looking. The nights never end on this long journey on a bus with no windows. I feel like an animal who is taken to the circus in a wagon with no light. Life hurts, blood freezes over. I'm going on a long journey where pain never ends the next morning. And one after the other, these days have left me blind to see where is my kite and why did I let it go.
What's in a Name? By Gary K. Farlow. Paris, who had never been to France. Bone crusher, who had never hit another human being. Professor, who didn't finish high school, who dreamed of driving a Datsun. Strawberry, who despised his given name of Walter. Big Mo, who had a heart of gold. Shantae, who wanted to be America's next top supermodel. September, who loved the autumn. Dove, who is so named by 1960s love child parents. Rabbit, who was scared of his own shadow. Catman, an Aunt Main version of Crazy Cat Lady. Chemo, who wanted to be a pharmacist. Tiny, who at 310 pounds was anything but. Disco, who used to enjoy Saturday Night Fever. prophet, who swore he could foretell the future, Papa Smurf, who claimed to be the oldest inmate inside, and to all the countless Jerseys, Phillies, New Yorks, Cowboys, DCs, preachers, and Callies. What's in a name? In prison, you can never tell.
Pledge of Allegiance by Gary K. Farlow. Here, in the land of cotton, where the first shot was fired, in a war that would see more American blood spilled than in any other conflict, we sit in darkness, images of freedom and loved ones swirling into a miasma of pain. The intercom recites the Pledge of Allegiance daily. With liberty and justice for all, our liberty is 2 5-minute phone calls and a shower once a week. Otherwise, it's 24-hour lockdown, 3 people in each 7x9 cell. And to the republic for which it stands, this is our republic, with shades of Abu Ghraib and injustice for all, as water slowly drips down the cinder block wall every time a toilet upstairs is flushed. The cell reeking of urine and humanity, while the intercom urges hygiene and keeping the cell sanitized. One nation, under God, don't make me laugh or cry.
Nana by Tanya Austin. I can smell the rose garden through the open window above my bed, the cool, crisp air wafting in the sweet fragrance of her prize-winning red, yellow, pink, and white roses. The smell covers me in a blanket of nostalgia. The earthy smell of fresh soil clings to her hands like the day after the first rain of the season. Tucking my hair behind my ear and whispering to me, "Close your angel eyes, little one." When she speaks, I am immediately intoxicated by the hint of obsession by Liz Taylor. Her housecoat drapes her in aromatics of stale Benson and Hedges cigarettes, French vanilla coffee, and the pot of tomato sauce simmering for tomorrow's meal. This scent is forever locked into my memory. I close my angel eyes and return to my favorite place, dreams of my Nana forever comforting me.
Attempting sobriety. Tossed about on a sea of fear, feelings of doubt and inequity forcing me under the surface. I'm drowning, choking, gasping, struggling for air. My addiction, an insidious temptation, lurking, creeping in like a shadow on the periphery of my vision, trying to find my weakness, ready to pounce the moment I begin to feel like I'm in control.
To My Trans Brother, My Incarcerated Word, by H.L. Tapia. I sit on the sidelines in support, questioning. How? Do you want my help? I do not see you as the novelty you are treated as. Shaved head, lesbian. Coupled up, gay for the stay. Beard, trans man. The new evolution of diversity for the incarcerated. We are all animals on display in the zoo. You are unique, same/similar parts. Yet you are the one with such courage, still struggling to feel okay, a part of the more accepting, expectant criminal element. Yet, do you accept your status on the yard? Your brothers have the same fights here. Respect? Acknowledged existence? Second chance? Your sisters come in packs, climb all over you, taking a piece of you as they move on, a souvenir. Bit by bit you shrunk. The hormones fade, the beard remains, stand your ground, the COs abound. Focused on your demise, they seem to not sympathize. You are beneath them. You are a threat. Smile and nod, we all play the game. Stand up, be strong, it got you this far. Special hybrid expression of beauty, light. Hold firm, son, you have won.
Quiet Night by Anthony Enos. It was an unusually quiet night. The normal blaring TVs and radios were all off. The typical long-distance conversations between inmates yelling back and forth from several cells away and the blusterous sounds of someone triumphantly declaring, "Checkmate!" were absent. On this night, some of us were preparing to say goodbye to a friend for the very last time. Hashi was making the rounds, saying his farewells to those that mattered to him. It was a ritual that played out each time someone's death date was upon them, upon all of us, like some Shakespearean tragedy. That's life on death row, a series of greetings and farewells. My turn to say goodbye was approaching faster than I wanted it to. I could hear Hashi drawing ever closer to my cell, and I steeled myself against the emotional onslaught that was certain to come when I looked into the face of my friend, a dead man walking. I needed to be standing when he got to my cell. I felt it would be inappropriate, disrespectful to be sitting, but I also felt like I had a ton of bricks strapped to my back, and I struggled to rise to my feet. As I did, my resolve began to melt away like ice cream on a summer day. Within seconds, Hashi was at my cell, his hand thrust through the bars in search of mine, and in that one gesture, my resolve dissipated to nothing. I grasped his hand with mine and reached my other arm between the bars and hugged him. "I love you, brother," is all I could manage. The dam broke and my eyes flooded with tears. Hashi squeezed my hand one final time and told me, "I love you too, little brother," and walked away. In that moment, there was a dignity and grace to him that I'd never seen. Even in what were to be his final days, he was still teaching, and I was still learning. I sat back down feeling a little lighter and sat vigil for the next 3 days. We all knew that Hashi had about 72 hours to live, and as it is with all who are transported to the death house, we prayed for that last-minute stay of execution, but God decided to say no this time, and at 12:07 a.m., Hashi was pronounced dead by lethal injection. Several years later, God would say yes to me. I'm alive today and no longer on death row. Now if I could just get him to say yes to easing this never-ending pain and loss.
Prison is not a depository, by Abdullah Muhammad. Prison is not a depository where your loved ones sit until you sacrifice your time for a visit, where credits are applied to accounts overdue, where we sit until the books are opened and accounts are balanced, but a place of banishment for the hearts and souls of mindless men, a place where ledgers are torn apart and years credited to eternity. Prison is not a depository, but a place where the balance owed is never reduced, a place built by the illusions of men in black robes with white-painted faces, an imitation of justice where numbers are counted and counted again, a mass of black men with twisted grins and distorted faces, a place where life is swallowed up by the horrors of fallen angels. Prison is not a depository, but a place of misery and pain, a place of eternal reckoning where daylight is shut out by ignorance, justice perverted to truth, truth to punishment, punishment to torture. Prison is a succession of years spent in madness. Prison is not a depository.
Mr. Box by Larry N. Stoneberg. A cool cat gliding with soul, immense wisdom in his demeanor, loved grooving to a tune, cherished every family member, never forgetting a name. Incarcerated by a condemning system, never gave up the fight for freedom. Redemption always in his sight, even with no light on the horizon. Faith and education his only escape. Diagnosed terminal with the cantankerworm. Hospice, an infirmary prison cell. Praying for a compassionate release. 47 years in, denied on his deathbed. No mercy for a lifer with remorse in his heart. Death flying Mr. Box away. He left prison in a body bag. He finally made it home with his ancestors in heaven.
Methamphetamine. These streets are the battlefield in my personal war. This glass pipe is my weapon, this baggie my armor. The tools that allow me to forget reality, even if it's only for a few minutes. To make myself feel better, to feel invincible, unable to ever be hurt again. Yet at the same time, causing me to hate myself. These things I do, they hurt the people that care about me. But with the people surrounding me, the prevailing attitudes, each day becomes harder than the last, bringing yet another battle between myself and my demons. Smoking more to cope with this lifestyle I've chosen, creating a vicious cycle that never stops.
To Imprisonment by Eric Perez. What better way to learn to live than to be stripped of your freedom? I committed no crime, okay, that's a lie, but how am I to recover when given no reason, no purpose to be something more? For what luck, what fortune? I do have a purpose, a reason, to help my fellow chattel look beyond the cowl of apathy to the day when they will be seen as beasts no more.
A Birthday in Prison by Keith Pertusio. He watches his grown daughter on the video screen. It's her 13th birthday, and she scheduled this visit just for him. She holds up a white frosted cake, then some colorful candles. She sticks each candle into the sweet icing and lights them one by one. "Daddy," she says, "all these years you could not be with me on my birthday. So I want you to blow out these candles when you can watch, like you're right here beside me." She is crying as she takes a deep breath and blows them all out. Everyone around her is crying too. But he is not. He has forgotten how.
Trapped in the bars of my mind. Addiction has feasted on my soul. Obsession controlling my thoughts. A dark cloud hovers over me, almost demonic. Held captive as a child by the sickness of abuse. The past suffocates me, tormenting my inner being. My thoughts wrapped around the razor wire, it cuts my spirit. Prison world. I gotta break free, plan my escape, release myself from the bondage, riot my emotions, sound the alarm. Next stop, death row, if I don't break the chains of oppression, addiction, and depression in my mind. I'll never forget the cage beatings, psychological isolation, abandoned by society. They keep on depriving and eyeing me, my remorseful existence. Accept rehabilitation and embrace my recovery. Learn to forgive all, including myself. How can I find my redemption? It's a lifelong spiritual journey, a tall task to endure. Getting an education has given me a purpose. Accountability and responsibility is the motto of truth. A heart of remorse. Therapy days. Atonement lays at my feet. Honestly standing now, freedom calls my name.
Bound by Christian J. Weaver. He holds the chain and jerks it tight, an inmate on the other end. He beams with pride and glows with hate, the feel of power in his hand. Betrays a grin, he turns to leave. Alas! The chain resists.
Living Are the Dead by David Neff. The wood is sensuous beneath her hand. She climbs the stairs, the railing a sensation she is denied, unless she steals it in private moments. From those who deny her, who keep her as all objects are kept by careless people, the rich, who can always buy another and another, her thoughts all secret in her head, the trailing of her hand, a sensation she is denied. The wood, sensuous, smooth, stolen pleasure, hidden thoughts are all she has. For all the world, all she has. She ducks her head to hide the smile she is not allowed to wear, will reveal the thoughts she is not allowed to think. And careless pleasure, stolen under the whip, always she remembers she is not free. Her hand, her lips, heart, breasts, soul, tremor,
Those who betray their position, crumbs given as abundance, are crucified and hung upon a wall on display. Woods cover faces, stripped of life, of character. Their only crime, the very fact they could only be themselves. You tell us that we're privileged. You tell us that we're blessed. Blessed are the meek, living are the dead. All of this is ordinary. Ordinary, all of this is ordinary, ordinary. Ordinary, all of this is ordinary.
There must be a better way. Maybe when you were a child, being sent to the corner for a timeout was effective in a lesson learned. But no walls were built around you, and if someone did, even emotional ones, they were wrong. There was a better way. As we grow, Mom becomes a jury and a judge, and the corner becomes a cell. 15 minutes becomes 15 years. Unfortunately, a better way eludes our society. Lives become wasted, minds get lost, human potential that can shine so bright, forced to dim in despair. All the while, society is being told a lie. There is no better way. But you are safer now that the bad people are locked away, with many never to be seen again. Do not worry what happens to them. They are the worthless, the ungrateful, lost souls whose purpose cannot be redeemed. An effective lie, but still a lie, because there is a better way. A wrong was done, a debt owed. But when the debt owed exceeds the ability to pay, bankruptcy occurs. Here we are, bankrupting souls, and not just those who have to stand in the corner.
No, by Eugene Tsunami Miller. No visits, no calls, no mail, no yard, no worries. So what? I'm still doing time.
The Beast in the Mirror by David Zinkees. The man staring at me is not the one meant to be. The mirror counts sheep every time I take a peek. Opportunities I failed to conceive in order to be the man I want to be. Now all I see is the devil's hold of me. Illusions and visions of a mirror beast.
Incarcerated but Inspired by David Richardson. Succeed, I will, at all costs. I refuse to settle for less. Incarcerated as I am, inspired nonetheless. Indomitable, I am, determined to strive for more. Incarcerated though I am inspired to the core. I am the current that carved canyons. I am the wind the world wields. I am the pole propelling planets. I am the fire feeding the fields. So, I ask, what door is there that can remain shut before me? Incarcerated though I am, inspired you will soon be.
My First Day on Death Row by Anthony Enos. Walking into the prison felt like walking into a medieval castle at the height of the Dark Ages. I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever leave. The humiliation of processing was surpassed only by my fear of the unknown. I had never been to prison, but not only was I going, but I was going to death row. The home of men like John Wayne Gacy and the so-called I-57 killer, among others. Until then, I had only read about such men in newspapers or seen them on television. I never, even in my worst nightmare, thought I would be counted amongst them, considered one of them. The reality of the situation smacked me in the face so hard I could almost feel the sting. This was worse than when I came to grips with the fact that I was in a life and death situation. These men were hardened killers, and I was now among them. I meant nothing to them. At that moment, I decided they wouldn't mean anything to me either. I was ready to do whatever I needed in order to survive. I hardened my heart and dismissed all thoughts of the outside world. My only reference material was movies I had seen, and in all the movies, the convict guy acted as though the outside world didn't exist. It sounds funny now, but when you're 21 and have never been to prison, you cling to whatever works for you. And that worked for me. I took a deep breath, lifted my head a little higher, and walked into the cell that would be my new home. I was expecting to hear all kinds of prison noises, you know? The names and catcalls that always seem to happen on television when the new guy gets to prison. To my surprise and relief, there was none of that. I arrived at my cell, and I was watching the key being put into the lock. It all seemed to be happening in slow motion. The door sliding open, my bedroom being placed on the bunk, the door sliding shut, and the worst sound of all, the door being locked behind me. Black Boy, Dark Child by Daniel Mopkins. A black boy, he sits alone, middle of class, afro swaying, he works alone. Headband, he loves rock and roll, panic switch, page after page scribbling mad, bloating sheets never touching the ground. Paper planes go MIA, no need for sustenance, little guidance or direction, no discretion, teacher keeps a close eye. Crayons and markers, colored paper, undefinable weapons. He alone is self-sustainable. Overalls and united shoes, striped shirt and underoos. Sometimes he never moves, looking out the window at giraffes and kangaroos. Pelican perched, dark child makes all the rules. In truth, he is not boy, nor is he black, entirely like you and I, periodically checking his elements, sorcerer revolving in orbit. He works alone, sorcerer in stone. Black boy is my precious heavy metal, drumming in my chest, refusing to let me rest.
Can't Breathe by Larry N. Schornberg. It's a hell of a thing when you can't breathe anymore. This is how grandfather must have felt on the day he went under the Delaware River. I never met the man. He died before I was born. Mother told me his story. It feels like I've known this man all of my life. His vessel capsized and deadly currents dragged him down. When they pulled his bloated corpse with only his boxers on 3 days later, it was evident Grandpa fought for every breath. He had applied his training methods from the U.S. Navy, trying to use clothing as life-saving flotation devices. But now, soaked and deflated, the rags wrapped around him. To no avail, the currents were too powerful. He didn't breathe anymore. Maybe being incarcerated with a life sentence is almost the same thing. Trying to survive, hoping to stay alive, dreaming of a second chance, fighting for every breath. Anxiety, confusion, panic. Drowning, but still conscious. Riding the currents till you can't breathe anymore.
Pain by Sean Harris. There is a purpose in the pain, a tapestry in the scars, a rhythm in the screams. The misery coddles my dreams with haunting lullabies. I learn to fabricate smiles and laughter from scratch. I nod my head and shrink into obscurity. My wounds are works of art. They splash across my canvas of flesh and bone, by artists known and unknown. So I am the portrait of pain and struggle, on display for all to ogle and wonder.
Lockdown by Gary K. Farlow. It's almost summer, the grass is green, and I long to feel the sun on my face. The grass is green as I press against the window, the sun on my face as clouds begin to gather. As I press against the window, a raindrop splatters on the glass, as clouds begin to gather and the sun fades to darkness. A raindrop splatters on the glass. I think of how long I've been inside, these walls, and the sun fades to darkness, like my life slowly slipping away. I think of how long I've been inside these walls, losing touch bit by bit, like my life slowly slipping away in the southern cinderblock hell.
The Man Not Taken by Christian J. Weaver. Had they fathomed the power these chains would unleash, they'd have left me to die on the street, on the street. They'd have left me to walk through this valley alone, far from home, baby doll, far from home. Had they fathomed the power these walls would unfold, they'd have fashioned their chains for my soul, for my soul. They'd have left me to die with a needle in hand. Neverland, baby doll, Neverland. Had you fathomed the power this pen would unfurl, you'd have always remained just my girl, just my girl. You'd have watched me arise from my very own ash, in a flash, baby doll, in a flash.
Convict Chronicles, An Ode to Time, by Leo Cardez. Time is the only constant in the universe, ceasing for no man, so ubiquitous we forget we're losing more and more of it every day. And we can never get it back. An alarm bell rings, another day at work. Count lights flicker, another night of TV binging. Then one day we look in the mirror and fail to recognize ourselves. Wonder when the wrinkles set in, or the gray started to appear. Where did our 20s go, our 30s? What have we done with our lives? Would you even call it a life? But wait, there is hope on the horizon. Every sunrise is the dawning of another opportunity. We can reverse course, to hope, to pray, to love, to give, to change our world. Lean into the day and ride this crazy roller coaster screaming. Time's constraints will keep us moored to our own routine if we let them. Learn to embrace the darkness of the unknown with a brave heart. Look time in the eye and dare it to catch you. And here's the payoff. Our spirits will soar, minds expand, and our legends grow. Then, and only then, can we say we have truly lived.
Loving a Convict by Debbie McGee. Loving a convict comes with a price, one you pay more each day. It's mostly from having no one to hold. It's being young yet feeling old. It's not having your son tell you I love you every day so you can tell him back. It's reluctant and painful watching him go back to cell block row, eyes filled with tears and a heart full of sorrow. A simple kiss with a promise to wait, knowing that the state is holding his fate. Loving a convict rips open all dreams. Days go by without any mail. Your heart stays hopeful while your mind drags you to hell. Once in a while, you can't stop the tears. Weeks become months and months become years. Loving a convict brings bitterness, pain, and loneliness with no sense of gain. Then someday it will be in the past, and your loving convict will be home at last. It is true that loving a convict is not all fun, but it is well worth the price when our time is done.
As longtime listeners of the podcast and longtime readers of the magazine will already know, the Captured Words Free Thoughts project is a lot bigger than just this magazine, which Stephen Hartnett has been working on for 20 years and which has expanded recently. It's also a part of the University of Colorado Denver's communication program, which helps us publish the magazine every year. And it's part of a bigger project where I and a number of other teachers, including Megan Cosgrove, who you've heard on this show before and who you heard again today reading a number of poems, you'll hear her again at the end of this episode, we go into prisons in Colorado and teach college classes. So we thought it would be appropriate to end with some work that a few of our students have sent us over the last year. The first one's called Meaningful, and it's by Tavon Williams.
In borders of cement, where shadows cling, a quest for knowledge, a soul takes wing. In prison's grasp, a journey true, the mind escapes, the heart anew. The page is turned, the spirit soars. In learning's embrace, hope restores. Each word, a key unlocking fate. In darkness, wisdom liberates. Though bars may bend and days seem long, the quest for truth keeps the spirit strong. For in the pursuit of knowledge's birth, a life redeemed is a soul's rebirth. In prison's depths, a spark ignites, and in that light, a world takes flight. For educating oneself with zeal makes this journey meaningful.
Finally, by Manuel G. Cisneros Sr. When asked what I find in writing, my response is complicated. Sometimes I find an out, an escape, into another world where creativity is endless. Finally, a place where my hurts, pains, fears, and worries can be put to rest. A place where I am in control. But then I wonder, how far have I come if I make no sense to myself? Yet I say this with pride. I am who I've always wanted to become. A loved man. I can also finally say that I love myself. Have you ever neglected yourself to the point of being lost? You have a friend in me, for we have walked the same path, lost and undeserving, or so we thought. I write because it gives me freedom, because what I have to say matters. Finally, I write.
Quo Vadis by Troy Brownlow. As the title infers, where are you going? In the nearly 2 decades I have spent as a resident of the Colorado Department of Corrections, I have learned several redeeming truths. A couple of the more preponderant ones that have elbowed their way to the threshold of my consciousness concern the calculus of power and agency. Prior to my incarceration, these concepts were foreign and elusive ideals that sat dormant in the caverns of my mind. As I continued to walk through the carceral landscape of calendars, I soon began to realize that where I wanted to go in life could prove just as relevant as why I came here. Even though I am in prison to account for the indefensible harm I caused society, for a long time I sincerely doubted that I could ever achieve a sufficient measure of punishment and rehabilitation, that I could ever satisfy anyone who had a stake in my incarceration. Fortunately, this seemingly impossible task never deterred me from trying to be a better version of myself. As I continued down this road, I did so with a heart full of gratitude for the lessons I learned along the way. Involving myself in the pursuit of higher education inadvertently brokered a deal between my past, present, and future. The guilt, shame, anxiety, and even the hopelessness that dogged my karma began to subside. I became infused with a newfound sense of confidence, and one by one, I put society's judgments and institutional indictments to rest. On occasion, I hear society lament that prisoners are not worthy of an education. But I never give my energy to any proposition that runs contrary to the spirit of transformation. I believe it was Dr. Martin Luther King who said, "Power is the ability to achieve purpose and effect change." This is precisely the residual impact that continuing education breeds. So I implore my contemporaries to press forward with their studies. Self-reliance and personal responsibility are the results of education. Here I am, 18 years later, and for the first time in a long time, I feel as though I am the captain of my ship. Today, I know how to stand my ground in the face of adversity because I learned how to cultivate an inner integrity that fortifies me against the tide of negative influences. Now, when I act on something, I do so with the better part of my nature. Once again, where are you going? Too many of us leave that decision to other people. Most of us do not march to the beat of our own drum, not because we do not know how, but because we lack the courage and vision to do so. Education is a resource that can never be rescinded by anyone. If you retain enough knowledge, you will be able to contribute something worthwhile to the grand mosaic of being.
pursuing an education as one of the highest forms of integration, or what the Greeks called becoming whole. We do this by combining our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors so that they are in concordance with what we have learned in life. I would encourage all of you to embrace the power within you and dedicate yourself to something bigger than yourselves. This is how we make the world better. You can't go back, and you can't stay here. So again, I ask, where are you going?
What'd you think, Megan?
I am
Said it's the best thing you've ever heard in your entire life.
Every year it is, right? Like, no, truly. Like, it's like every time you get an assignment from an incarcerated person, like an incarcerated student, right? Or every time that we have to try and filter through the stuff that we get, like, it hurts to have to not include people's stuff, because I feel like prison art is, I mean, art in general, but particularly prison art is such an incredible expression of like what it means to thrive under the most terrible of circumstances, right? Like, there's that super cliche saying about the weed that grows in the concrete, or
the
like,
rose that grows in concrete.
Right?
Where'd that come from?
I don't know.
It's Tupac.
Is it?
Yeah, his poster's in the office where we usually record these.
Look, it all comes back to
that
Tupac.
quote is in there, actually. No one asked why the rose that grew from concrete had damaged petals. Instead, we would celebrate its tenacity. We would applaud its will to reach the sun. We are the roses. This is the concrete. Here's my damaged petals. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you, from those circumstances, you did that. We tend to be like, look at this little rose. It's so small compared to the others that grew up with $1 million in their pocket.
It's so little. Art in general is incredible. Art that's made under what are arguably some of the worst or most confining or restrictive circumstances is even more incredible, especially when we think about art as being like bound only by your imagination, but the way that your physical body is confined in prison. It never ceases to amaze me the way that, like, how far people can extend things.
Mm.
My freedom kite.
We were just talking before the recording started about humans and adaptation and tolerance and sensitization, and how our bodies are designed to take whatever state we're in and just make it normal. So if I'm like, we were talking about when people get out of prison, a lot of times they do really good for a week or a month, or the magic time, in my view, appears to be between 3 and 6 months. They go from being fine to being sometimes back in the dumps if something isn't picking up and they haven't been integrated into culture. That's like the same thing that you're saying as somebody that's been through prison. I remember getting there and being sapped dry and trying to tap into writing and being like, there's nothing. And then it's almost sad to think about, but my baseline actually adjusted so much that within a year I could access the creative juices because there's nothing else there. My brain literally went from like, no, give me something first, to something now is an ant walking across the ground. Yay. I shot hoops for 5 minutes. I feel better about life.
See, but like and that goes back to the prison coffee piece, right? When in the quote unquote free world, a cup of coffee takes 3 minutes to make, because you turn on your Keurig and put in your single use K-cup and walk away while it brews and do something else, versus like the ritual routine of it in prison. Like, to what extent is this literally saving people's lives, giving them something when they deserve so much more than just something, but they share the most vulnerable pieces of themselves that we get to be able to see. Just, it's the most incredible thing to me that we get to do every year, and it's one of my absolute favorite projects. The Nana piece by Tanya Austin, it gives me chills every time the Close Your Angel Eyes hits me in my soul, right? Because in this space where she's being forced to be alone and presumably scared, right? She goes back to this point in time where somebody loved her and somebody was taking care of her.
Yeah, there was lots of work this year that seemed to step outside. No, it seemed to step outside the box of the prison trope, about prison, and a lot of it was about things that seemed incredibly disconnected. And I was telling students this morning in my class on campus that's kind of the underlying theme of the magazine, is to just present a different perspective of what is in prison and what are the people in there focusing on, doing with their time, thinking about things like that. You had a cool story that you wanted to share, right? From one of your
that actually does make it about prison. The What's in a Name by Gary K. Farlow. Prison names fascinating. Did you have a prison name?
Yeah.
What was it?
Josh.
Why was it Josh?
Do what you will with it, I guess. I think the guys that gave it to me were in a cubicle with me, and they were always real friendly. So I don't think it was meant to be a dig. So I think they gave it to me because I'm just a normal-looking white guy. And they were like, you just look like a Josh. Also, Josh means joke. So at times I imagine people...
Oh, jokester.
And that could just be my
like
self-confidence.
You were the jokester?
Almost like... Or that he's a joke, like that's just some it's a joke or whatever. But I don't know.
Like
my understanding of it was that I was just such an ordinary looking run of the mill white guy. They just called me Josh because they couldn't remember my name. But it was one of those two things.
All right. So Josh, I'm always fascinated, right? Like we have a student who goes by Push.
Yeah.
What does it stand for? Like persevere under severe hardship or something?
There you go.
Right?
Yep.
Is that what it is?
Yep.
Like I didn't know that. We have one who said that was like static. I still haven't figured out what static means. He refused to tell me. He told me that was a different person.
You want some static? Static means beef. Static means just a little bit fuzzy around the edge. Keep your distance.
See,
if you want static, come get some static.
Well, another one said that his name is Sway.
Sway. Yeah.
I don't know what sway means.
Oh, come on. Sway is just to think about how it sounds. Sway.
I have no idea what that
Swizzle,
means.
Swam. I don't know. It's all the other
stuff. Did you say swizzle, swam, sway?
Think none of those mean anything. They just sound like, like this guy's got some flazam. I'll bet if you catch him in the world, man, he's going to be wearing a suit with some jewelry. You're going to be like, I get it, Sway. But
isn't that swag?
Not. Yeah.
Is that outdated?
No,
I don't know.
I could be totally wrong about that one, but Sway sounds like the sort of name. There's a guy named Scrappy that I gave a nickname to that, like, even hearing that should kind of tell you what he looked like.
A little dog? Scrappy Doo?
Yeah, but tall, skinny, kind of beat up, tattoo on his face.
You gave him the name Scrappy?
Talk kind of like mess with me.
So he wasn't from Michigan?
He was. I was in prison with him on my second time in prison in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Long story. Yeah.
I have to finish this because it's important.
We didn't even get to the story.
No, we got distracted by 3POC.
We had to throw a whole podcast in the middle that will be cut out.
Makes sense.
Podcast magic.
Podcast magic, still my favorite. Okay, so we have those students, right? We've loved that for them. Nobody will ever tell me what their names meant, but I inadvertently helped give someone a prison nickname on the very first day of our classes. Like the very first day we're ever teaching, I'd been prepping for months. I had called you, like we had Zoom calls. I had been terrified. You were like, calm down, it's really okay. I was like, Ben, it's not going to be okay. You were like, no, it's really fine. Like, stop being you. Which, valid. We go in, and so I love to start class with the question of the day, right? Because I think it's really important for building classroom community. And so we're doing our first introductions. I'm like, hey, give me your pronouns, give me your name. Like, tell me if you were dessert topping, what you would be and why. And we got like regular answers at first. There was like, caramel or like hot fudge. And then we get to someone and he's like, wow, you're really trying to break down the walls of masculinity here on the first day. And I got nervous. I freaked out. I was like, this is exactly what I was trying to talk to Ben about. He told me this wouldn't happen. And I was like, no, we're just talking about desserts. And so I think that someone said that they would be marshmallow fluff. And everybody started laughing. And they were like, haha, because you're white and fluffy. And I was like,
nice.
Do I intervene? Like, what do I let it happen? I don't know. So we get to another student who would end up being one of like the most super brilliant person, just very reserved, right? Totally fine. And their response was just air. And I don't remember it being like a big thing, but like a year later, we were in that same class and they were like, called him air. And I was like, whoa, wait, what? And that stuck from the first day of your class when we asked about dessert toppings, like his prison nickname is air. And that's one of my like biggest prison teaching moments now is that I don't understand prison nicknames. I love prison nicknames. And somehow my question of the day gave someone a name. Bringing it back to Gary K. Farlow. Were there any pieces that you wanted to talk about? I'm always proud of the graduation stuff. Like I know that we got this in.
Yeah, we haven't had graduation stuff until
because we had the last year's issue had everything pulled together.
So if you're listening, feel free to go and if you don't have a paper copy, you can go on just Google capture words free thoughts and go to the website. But you can see pictures of Megan and I with Megan. Both of us are with one of our graduating class, and then I'm with the other one.
You are front and center grinning. That was such a fun day.
That was a fun day.
That was a really good day.
Except we didn't get to leave.
Do you remember how cold it was?
The freeway snowed shut while we were there. So on the way home, we had to drive down like back road. Megan, you don't know what you're complaining about. You stayed there.
No, I drove. I drove home that night, but I went around, and it took me like an hour and a half extra.
Yeah.
Down back country roads in almost Kansas, Nebraska. I don't know geography.
Almost Nebraska.
Yeah. That was a wild time.
We do.
For those of you that don't know, Sterling, Colorado is the windiest.
Yeah. I think one of our students wrote about that in their graduation speech. But yeah, the magazine this year, among many of the things we didn't have time to record because there's literally 90 pages this year, are some statements from some of our graduating students. And if you got family members that are submitting stuff and you want to get their vocals recording their own audio and just send us an audio of it, it's not okay for me to reach out to them and call them. DOC would have a problem with it. But if we actually got audio files from family members, it should be okay for us to use that audio.
Yeah. I also really love the joke that Philip started with. All right, fellas.
The pre-Oscar.
How do you find Will Smith in the snow? Fresh Prince. Yeah, that was just months before the Oscars. Yeah, so that's for sure one of my favorite sections of this, just because it's really incredible to be able to. It's been a little over a year since we got to celebrate that with them, and so it feels good to look back.
Speak for yourself.
Oh yeah, you still get to be in there.
Hopefully, our prison program is getting ready to pick back up, and
so it feels really good to.
We'll be back in the
to see that and hear from them.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Did you get your story done? I think this is still recording.
Yeah.